Bitcoin, Bitcoin,
Get a systematic buying plan from the UnoCoin app to get your Bitcoin today. Download the UnoCoin app.
Crypto products are unregulated and could be highly volatile. Please be aware of the risks before investing.
Okay, hello everyone. Once again, welcome back to UnoCoin's weekly live sessions. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Burjis, who we know as one of the most prominent Bitcoiners, and who we also know for his very interesting memes that he keeps sending on the group. I think all of you who are in certain Bitcoin groups on WhatsApp must have come across his interesting creations, and I'm so happy to have him today because today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, the perspective evolution on money. Now, this is something we have been through, and this is a very personal journey. And I think it'll be very interesting, from Burgess, how has it been for him? So, first of all, welcome to the session, Burgess.
Thank you so much, Sambhavi. It's
Okay.
quite humbling in terms of the introduction.
No, I actually quite enjoy the memes and all, and I use them as forwards very often.
Nice.
I have to,
Nice to know that.
yeah, but those are a good tool for orange pilling. I just keep sending it to my friends.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just to get a quick information, Burgess, how has your journey been like in Bitcoin? Like, how did you become a Bitcoiner?
Okay, so that's actually an interesting one. My journey started somewhere back 9 years ago
Mhm.
when when I was switching jobs, and the headhunter, he suggested that, have you heard about this Bitcoin? This is something which is appreciating in value on a day-to-day basis. And I said, uh, I don't want to get into it right now, considering the fact that I'm just moving on to a different job. I would rather want to focus on the job rather than get into something which is unknown. And of course, 9 years back, it was actually unknown in the country.
Yes.
But nevertheless, this guy kept coaxing me to say that, have a look at it, invest a little, and then we will talk. At some point of time, he mentioned that, consider this as you're waiving off your joining bonus, and you put that money into Bitcoin, and then let's talk. So that was an interesting take which I got from him, and I said, let's do that. And that is when I decided to, venture in. And of course, once you dip your hands into something, you would want to then look out for what it is rather than just putting money and ignoring it. So after I started that first initial investment, that is when I realized I need to know more about it. And that is when I actually started studying.
Okay.
The moment that happened, I realized that this is just not appreciating in value. This is something much, much bigger, and which the world is going to really appreciate at a later date. And as days went by and the research and reading increased, the conviction increased much more. And that is how I started my journey.
Okay, that's a very interesting thing to know, because most
Yeah.
people I have known who kind of invested in it just for the sake of investing in the price appreciation part, they always, whenever there's been a crash or there's been a bear run, after that they kind of moved out of the market, and then maybe took them some time to come back. But I think it's a great deal that you started studying about it immediately. So
You're right. So the basic thing is, the moment you are faced with a crash, that is when you realize that you have not come in just for the money's sake. You need to research further to build your conviction to say that, is this going to survive the next cycle, or is this going to survive the next boom? And once you start studying it, you realize that actually this is the thing you would want to invest your money, efforts, time, energy, everything into,
yeah.
right? And day by day, as your conviction starts increasing, you realize that price is just consequential to it. It's just a play. It's just a matter, in terms of how it is going to appreciate. And thankfully, knock on wood, it's gone from what you see like a few $1,000s to $100,000 in a span of, say, 13, 14 years. And that's something which is quite intriguing, interesting, and something which most of the world people would have not thought of that it could appreciate so much in such a short span of time.
Amount of time. So it's very interesting, the way Bitcoin has changed. For me, particularly, I think I got into it because I was getting a lot of internships in this particular spectrum during college, and then it was good
Hmm.
money for me. And I somehow was really like, oh, it's technical, it's this, it's that. I'll just write about it, forget about it. But then slowly and gradually, I became so intrigued. And when I completely understood that, I think Sunny, the co founder of Uno Coin, he owes
Yeah.
the credit to make me an orange pill me practically, because he spent a lot of time explaining it to me why is it important.
Hmm.
And I'm really grateful for that to him. But as I understood, I think a very crazy slump of thought process happened where I started questioning everything that is in front of my eyes in terms of the current fiat system. And
Absolutely.
for me, it was surprisingly eye opening, because I never thought something that I've grown up believing in could
Hmm.
be so different from what it is, projected as. So, how was that for you? Like, did you have one such period where you were like, oh, okay, which one of these is the right thing?
No, it's actually an important study one needs to make in order to appreciate Bitcoin, and more so from the kind of financial crisis the world has witnessed and been party to. Uh, let's talk about the financial crisis of 2008, Lehman Brothers, the collapse of Lehman Brothers, right? The subprime crisis. Now, at that point of time, the bailout which was done by the US government to bring out the banks back to business was huge. Now, where is that money coming from? That is something one needs to question. Similarly, similarly, let me jog your memory. I mean, of course, none of us were born then, but let me talk about the Executive Order 6102. I'm sure people would be aware, but let me throw you a little more light on that. This was something which was during the Great Depression, where people were not willing to spend money, and therefore they were holding gold. Gold was the store of value then, right? And at that point of time, the Feds realized that this is some to come out of the depression, one needs to start spending that gold or spending money to revive the economy. Now, having said that, what has happened is people were not doing so. So they issued an order which was Executive Order 6102. This was way back in 1933, right? And that order said that whatever gold you have, you need to give it back to the government. Now, as a matter of fact, as a honest tax paying citizen, are you comfortable with that, right? Imagine, put yourselves in the shoes of a grandparent or a parent who has slogged his years, saved money for his children, put it in the put it in gold, which is the store of value. Then, okay, and one fine day the government says that you need to return the gold back to us. Of course, I'll pay you for that. They paid the citizens around $20 to an ounce, okay, which is okay. But the moment they did that overnight, they changed the value of gold or hiked up the value of gold to almost $34. Now, is that justified? Actually, not.
Mhm.
Now, if that be so, if the government is gonna, take away the assets which you solely believe that these are owned by you and nobody can, impact it, then I think we are actually wrong in that process. And that is when you start reading and what happened in history to give you a sense of why Bitcoin was actually found, right? It's not a mere coincidence, according to me, that the white paper was floated on the internet, which was coinciding with the date of the Lehman Brothers collapse. They collapsed in October 2008.
Yeah,
The white paper was released on 31st October 2008, almost simultaneously,
almost simultaneously, yes.
right? Come fast forward to 3rd January 2009. That is when the Genesis block was
Yeah,
mined by Satoshi. Now,
yeah.
again, it's not a mere coincidence because the Times, which was the newspaper then, carried an article that the chancellor on the brink of second bailout for the banks. And that is the exact inscription which Satoshi implanted in the Genesis block. Now, it cannot be coincidence. It has to be a very thought of process for a person. I'm sure he would have gone through the angst and the pain of all this in the past to come up with such a radical thinking. And
Indeed.
once you start thinking on those lines, you would realize that you start appreciating Bitcoin much better for the technology that it is rather than the value which is going to come through.
Indeed, actually, the problem that it is solving at the ground level, I think for me, that was it was a very surreal feeling because,
Hmm.
interestingly, so everything has just been in front of our eyes all this time.
Yeah.
My plus two was in commerce, so I always I was very intrigued with this one part in our textbook. It was called the characteristics of money. So there were
Hmm.
like certain characteristics listed: portability, durability, transferability, this and that. And certain points, I did not fundamentally agree with because that is not the case with fiat. And back then, I did not know of Bitcoin in such detail in class 12th. So I happened to ask my econ teacher, but
Yeah.
this is not what paper money matches with, this doesn't make sense. So she's like, no, no, it does in this and this manner. So she justified it to me, but because I had to get my board marks in my boards because I
Hmm.
wouldn't want to risk my marks just
True,
based on
true, true.
it. So I said, yeah, okay, let's just agree with whatever she's saying. But later, much later, when I came across Bitcoin, that thing kept, I kept on getting that reminder in my head ki, acha, okay. Paper money does not kind of align with those characteristics of money, but just thinking out loud, Bitcoin does. And
Absolutely.
and this is like characteristic of money. Such a crucial thing. I think all of us are working hard in our lives, pushing the bounds and the limits of how much we can work hard and maybe doing. Some people are overtiming, some people are just looking for a better opportunity. Some people are doing multiple jobs to make that money. And all for one, which is financial freedom and some freedom to just live their lives the way they want. They shouldn't have to worry about some sort of financial constraints there. And imagine this very, very recent realization. I think I mentioned that in one of the previous pieces as well, where I work in the same compound. There's this another girl who's like a fresher, and her apparently her appraisal was pending, didn't happen. Something,
Hmm.
some technicality, and it did not happen. So it happened in December for her. I used to keep, I would keep talking about Bitcoin and inflation rates over the years and this and that. And she's like, I got my appraisal. I'm like, oh wow, congratulations. How much was it? She's like, it was 8%. I'm like, okay. I mean, I did not know how to react. Should I be happy? Should I not? I just was very neutral. Like, but remember, you told me that the inflation rate has been over 10 to 12% over the past years, and then I'm not able to understand how is this an appraisal. And that whole thing hit me so hard because while most people right now in the workforce who have been there for 10, 15 years would not understand this, but the Gen Zs that are entering the workforce now are rejecting the idea of being paid less over the years, and I think Bitcoin is entering and penetrating their minds in that direction a lot, which is again an eye opener because a lot of people do not realize that the year on year, despite the fact that they're getting appraisals, I think they're at par with the entire whatever the value of money is, or versus
Right.
that.
Right. So, in fact, when you talked about people doing double shifts, triple shifts in life, right, to earn money, but even in spite of doing that, like you rightly said, the increment which comes up is 8%. That is not even beating inflation. Now, if something which you earn by spending energy and it's not even beating inflation, how are you going to use that amount which you earned or the money which you earned for a future date? Because the inflation is going to deplete the purchasing power of that money which you earn today for something which you would want to purchase tomorrow, right? And money actually takes different forms. Money is a unit of measure, it's a medium of exchange, a unit of measurement. It could also be a store of value, right? And the characteristics which you have spoken about is actually something which I would look for in a store of value, right? And store of value is something which is where I would want to invest my hard earned money such that tomorrow, which is almost 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, the amount is safe, the amount is appreciating, the amount is with me, and I'm able to fulfill my dreams, which I had, thought about way back. Now, if you were to contrast it with the earlier store of value, which is gold, I feel that Bitcoin actually ticks mark everything which the store of value attributes or characteristics which you would want to, but even does much better than gold, right? Gold has lived its purpose. Undoubtedly, it used to be a store of value. It still continues to be a store of value. But in the current present day and age where everything has gone digital, right? Why would I want to put my time, money, and energy into something which is so hard, something which is not so portable, something which is not divisible, right? Something which I can carry across borders, right? And carry across borders is not about money laundering. Carry across borders is, I'm referring to a situation where the general population has to escape that place in a war laden area, right? Supposing I'm in a country like Syria, there is war which is going on, my hard earned money is at stake, right? The best thing I could do is convert it into Bitcoin and move out rather than going with the gold and at the border and check and the gold or all my
Yeah.
worldly possessions are taken away from,
Yeah.
right? So when you compare the characteristics of store of value, I feel Bitcoin checks mark everything much, much better compared to gold. And if you were to lay it down, talk about divisibility, well, Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million decimal places.
Yeah.
Gold is divisible, but at a cost. In order to divide a 1 kg bar of gold, you can't do it yourself. You need to go to a goldsmith. Then you have to trust that goldsmith that after he's going to divide it, he's going to return the same characteristic of gold, which is basically, or the quality of gold, which you have given him,
Hmm.
right? In terms of portability, we discussed, just try, transporting 100 kgs or 100, yeah, 100 kgs of gold, $100 million worth of gold vis-a-vis a Bitcoin transaction. It's it's it's
It,
it's a no-brainer if
yeah.
you were to start comparing, in terms of whether you want to store your money or invest your money in a store of value, which is a gold, which is traditional, or something which is futuristic and which is Bitcoin.
Exactly. And I think I happened to read this one tweet. It was last year, right after the ETF approval, that
Hmm.
it's time that we start setting the terminologies right. Gold is the non-digital Bitcoin, something like that. And for me, I think interestingly, because I come from a family of gold merchants, and
Oh, lovely.
I've struggled long and hard to explain this to my father, how similar and how different Bitcoin is with gold. And my mom's already orange pill, so she's pretty chill and she understands. And now they happen to have debates about it. And then they
Hmm.
call me up and then they're like, Acha, okay. And then of course I'm taking my mom's side. He's like, oh, you're gonna take your mom's side. But then yeah, one thing that I've really seen has helped me orange pill people is explaining this exact dynamic with gold, with the whole money characteristic part, with the whole inflation thing to some extent. But how do you look at sovereign gold bonds as an investment scheme? Then, just to quickly get your perspective, because that is something new age people have referred to a lot, and now even those are being pulled back by the government.
True. So there were two reasons why, I mean, one reason why the bonds were pulled back by the government, mainly it was on account of the custom duties, right? It was the custom duties were relaxed in the earlier budget, and as a result of which, gold being imported was much cheaper compared to people who had purchased the gold bonds earlier, which was at a higher rate. As far as the gold bonds are concerned, my sense is one, what are you investing in, right? If you are convinced that gold is not what you want to be in, vis-a-vis Bitcoin, then I think it is much better. The other thing is whether the authority or the institution who are giving you these gold bonds have a 1:1 collateral with the gold or the actual gold, or are they dealing out only pure paper IOU, okay, which means that they call it out on paper that 100 grams or 1 kilo of gold is owned by you, but where in fact in their reserves they don't have equivalent amount of gold. Now,
Mm.
if that be so, then actually you are hitting a scam, and you may be losing out your money, which you wouldn't want to.
Exactly, and it's basically how I look at it. I kind of compare the whole Web3 dynamics with the SGB part. So it just the way government is being the Web3 and they're tokenizing gold.
Mhm.
So it has no intrinsic value practically. And even if it does, you have no proof that it has an intrinsic value. You're just blindly trusting the government.
Absolutely. Have we seen the gold reserves? Answer is not,
Obviously,
right?
nobody can.
To,
So,
to the extent, to the extent that way back in 1971, let me quote, since we are talking about gold, President Nixon, he
yes.
removed the gold standard,
Yep.
right? The US dollar, which is the reserve currency of the world, is
Mhm.
no longer backed by gold, right? The most prominent, strongest currency is not backed by gold. We don't even know how much of gold reserves they hold,
They hold, yeah.
right? Then what are we talking about?
Nothing practically given them
Exactly,
power,
exactly.
regulation.
And gold has lived its life. It's good, no doubt. It's more of an ornamental value, especially in the Asian countries, and therefore it is looked upon differently compared to the West. But if you ask me personally, I would rather invest my money in Bitcoin and Bitcoin alone, rather than investing in gold or any other assets.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just one shift of Bitcoiner perspective, I would say, and I
So,
think that is what this session is about. Because, Acha, okay,
yeah.
just to kind of put in some more context here for people who do not understand or know of Bitcoin as much. What was your investment journey like before you got to know about Bitcoin, or before you came across it?
So basically, the investment journey is more into equities, right? You earn 100, you spend 50, 60, depending upon how your lifestyle commands, right? At some point of time, you borrow, you get into a debt trap also,
Mm.
because plastic money has failed the generation. It has actually, given a lot of unnecessary avenues for a person to overspend, and people have gone through that phases at times, right, because of plastic money and the credit card. So therefore what used to happen generally is you invest in equities, you invest in maybe fixed deposits, and that's about it till Bitcoin actually hit you. And then you realize that, why would I want to do that? FDs give you a rate of 7% interest. Okay, post tax it is hardly 4%. I'm not even beating inflation. Equities is basically more on your understanding of the company and the talk which you hear during your normal commute to work, especially during train commute, where some punters are discussing that this stock is going to go up or that stock is going to go down, and you decide whether you want to invest in this or short this stock. And then suddenly you realize, oh God, I've lost money in this, right?
Mm. So yeah, stock market also requires just to I don't know. I mean, again, guys, everyone who's watching, this is just my personal opinion, and I'm not giving any investment advice here. But yeah, when I look at stock market, I find it very unsettling because again, the thing that you're kind of believing in and maybe are kind of hoping to have your some sort of magic done with your money and that it increases or it's based on certain fundamental factors and again which is governed by the a certain authority. There's this particular company and their performance and you don't have the power and the control there to kind of know. I think I know a lot of people think that Bitcoin is very volatile and then it has got no predictability. And I know that predicting Bitcoin's price is stupidity, but then you have some sense of predictability knowing the fundamentals of it, ki where the trajectory is going. So very recently, even I don't know if you're familiar with Chetan. Chetan talks about power law a lot, which I am very fascinated with. So
Yeah.
I always keep asking him these questions around it, and because we are getting a trajectory there, so that sort of control over because it's so solid in fundamentals that there's hardly anything that can shake its grounds. So
True. So, sorry, but
uh,
since you're talking about stocks, your stake in a company can always get diluted,
mhm.
right? In terms of the company issuing bonus shares, your 100%, 20% stake can be reduced to 10% because they've issued more number of shares, right? Same way can happen through a rights issue of shares, where your stake is diluted because of that. You are at the end at the mercy of the company and its operations in terms of how well they perform for the stock to appreciate in a manner which is generally not in line with their operations. Because if you were to observe the stock market, it works on various other fundas, which is outside the normal operations of the company, right? It works on various other sentiments. Something goes wrong somewhere, and the stock market dips here, hitting your investments. Vis-a-vis Bitcoin, it's 21 million capped. There will never be another Bitcoin above or more than 21 million.
Yeah,
So therefore, whatever you are going to invest in is sacrosanct. It can go higher, but it can never go lower.
yeah,
And when I say higher, because many a times people lose their private keys, right? As a result of this, the Bitcoin is lost forever,
yeah.
which means the circulating supply
Is even
tends to
yeah.
go down rather than it going up. So
Hmm.
that is one which is a very big fundamental difference between equity and Bitcoin. Next, in case of equity, right? Uh, if people are actually into equity market and Indian stock market, I can tell you one thing. If you were to compare the market cap of Bitcoin and take the top 30 companies on BSC and you take the market cap of those top 30 companies, it will then be equivalent to the market cap of Bitcoin. So
Yeah,
this is the sheer size of the beast and what we are dealing with, right? Uh, you also mentioned about the price volatility of Bitcoin.
yeah,
To me, this price volatility will continue. And it will continue for a simple fact that an asset class, which was never known to the world so far, if it has to hit a value, it cannot go overnight from zero
of
to
course.
100,000 or
Yeah.
to a 1 million or to a 10 million. It will have its own boom bust cycles. And because people will come into this space in waves, many people come for the price point appreciation and therefore they will purchase at X price. They see a profit at Y, which is almost 2x, 3x, and they move out. There will be people who feel that no, this technology is revolutionary. This is something I want to back the technology with, and therefore they'll stay invested. And
Hmm.
therefore, the volatility has to be there. It is not going to go away. At
Necessary.
the yeah, at the same time, 100,000 to my mind is just a rounding of error as of now. You're gonna see much, much, much better days than what we are seeing right
Yeah,
now, right? And this is just in a span of 13, 14 years.
yeah,
And what are we talking, right? Gold took 2,000 years to reach this value.
yeah.
2,000 years. This is done in 13 years. The unfortunate part is the current generation lives in a 2 minute Maggie noodles generation, right? They want everything instant. In 2 minutes, the noodles should be ready. It doesn't happen,
Doesn't happen.
right? So to go fast, you need to go slow. You need to learn to go slow. And once you have that patience, once you start understanding this space, once you start reading, researching, I'm telling you, price is inconsequential. It will just follow.
Yeah, it'll just follow exactly. I think it serves such a bigger purpose, Bitcoin in general, because we talk about solving so many problems on the ground level: environment, global warming, women empowerment, underprivileged kids development, and so many problems. Imagine all
Hmm.
of these problems can be solved if you just understand Bitcoin. I mean, I'm speaking on a very surface level here, but if we go into the depth of each of these problems, the problem is money. Women empowerment will happen if women have control over their finances. They understand how to manage, and once they have the power of money, they don't need a third party coming in and telling them what to do with their money, or how to live their life, or maybe if they should kind of give into certain domestic violence and all those. They wouldn't, because they would know that they have the power of money, and that will come from Bitcoin. Underprivileged kids, you teach them about Bitcoin. I mean, whatever money they save, and if they just understand Bitcoin, the fundamentals of it, they can change their lives, if not immediately, maybe in the next 10-15 years when they start earning, because they understand the technology. Like that, I mean, so many basic problems can be solved if only Bitcoin is implemented in the system in a full-fledged manner. But the fact that we are talking about all of these problems in fragments and not together, it's such a manipulative theory that is out there. The different wings of people working in different for different problems. There are different ministries for each of these problems, which are needed anyways. I'm not saying those are not needed, but then, yeah, the kind of efforts and endeavors they're making can be eased up to such great extent if they just implement one factor, that money is the core problem for every problem.
It's actually not the money, but the greed for money and a higher power
Of course.
which causes all this, right? And the ability for the governments to print money, which gives them the unnecessary advantage to call themselves as superpower, which is creating this. Just remove that ability from any government or any state for that matter, and then you realize that things will fall in place.
And it'll be
And
so much more peaceful.
absolutely. So that is why it is called freedom money, right?
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, look at El Salvador, though I haven't really had much of a time to catch up on what's going on in there as of late. But I think the economy is thriving there.
Right,
And
right.
I also am very interested to understand what kind of motivated President Nayib Bukele to go out there, adopt, Bitcoin as the legal tender, and then, have it. People over there making basic payments in Bitcoin. Bitcoin education is in, full mode over there, and things are happening. They're utilizing I think, the natural sources like volcanoes and all for mining. They're working
True,
on sort of projects.
true.
So the way it's kind of, because we know, who heard of El Salvador before the Bitcoin thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the way it's changing, it's insane.
So El Salvador had a US dollar denominated currency, right? Most of their citizens used to work in US, North America, send money back home, which was part of South America. And the middlemen, when the money is transferred, especially the Western Union, used to take a heavy cut out of it. Uh, because it was dollar denominated country, what used to happen is there were a lot of drug lords and a lot of unsocial elements which were on the streets. The moment, like we discussed, the moment you remove dollar or anything, which is the ability of printing it on a day-to-day basis without any collaterally advantageous position, you realize that all this is going to stop. And that is when uh, people like Jack Mallers, people like Max Kaiser, they orange pilled Naib to say that this is what you need to get on to.
Mhm.
The moment that happened, the crime rates have come down, right? To the extent that IMF was complaining, stating that you cannot be on this Bitcoin standard, otherwise we will not, give you the
Yeah.
loan. However, at that point of time, Naib was too adventurous and he said, no, I will continue with this. Correct. There were a lot of propagandas, especially by environmentalists like Greenpeace, They were funded by the CEO of XRP, where they were running various advertisements saying that Bitcoin is proof of work, taking a lot of electricity power consumption, which is equivalent to some countries' power consumption, right? And therefore, they need to move from proof of work to proof of stake.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. To counter that, Naib said, I have renewable energy in my country, and I will use the thermal energy from the volcanoes to mine Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. That's the
Right?
whole story.
That's the whole story. And he started off with volcano bonds, which said that you invest in those bonds. I invest that money into the infrastructure and I start mining Bitcoin.
Okay.
So they have already started doing that.
Interesting. I mean, I can just see El Salvador maybe emerging as one of the most prominent economies in the next 10 years from South America at least.
True. Followed by Bhutan. Bhutan is also doing
Mining.
Bitcoin mining and they're officially claiming that, right?
So, just to quickly, I mean, now when this news about Bhutan came, I have always been very interested in what the neighboring countries are doing around Bitcoin. There's Bhutan on the one side where they're so, intrigued by it and they're already mining it, they're filling in their reserves with it. And then there is Nepal on the other side where you can't even talk about crypto and Bitcoin in general. So
True.
it's a crime. You can't talk
Absolutely.
about it. And then in between we have India.
Which is not on any of the side. I mean,
Not on
out
any.
here also, out here also, it's the same story. We can't talk about crypto. We can't talk about Bitcoin. I don't know when we will wake up. The wake up call has already been announced last year when the ETFs came,
Yeah.
right? It got the validation which the world wanted to. SEC recognized it as a valid financial instrument, right? What more do you want? What more do you ask for?
I
And
know.
in spite of that, if we are going to be a sleeping country, I don't know what to say.
Exactly, and this really scares me to know because now we have the budget day coming up on the 1st of February. We've
Right,
seen a lot of anticipations happening, but past 3 years, nothing much have. There hasn't been much of a change around any taxation laws. In general, capital gains, let's not talk about the VDA virtual digital asset, but in general, the capital gains taxes. So, something that I figured being in the center of the entire the finance side of the country in the fintech world, this is something that I've learned because I happen to deal with different companies with different asset classes or different kind of service provisions, and something they have different governing bodies like there's SEBI for the debt security market, and then there is FIU for the crypto side of the world, and then there is our there are different governing bodies for different asset classes, and
right.
all of them have got one agenda, and I say this with all the sensitivity and respect for the authorities that are there in this country. The agenda is somehow just stop the investor education that is happening via these companies and make it a point to create so many regulations around it. They will die navigating through it, but they won't be able to figure out the right way to educate masses. They will keep struggling with it because be that any investment, in the name of investor protection, I don't know, we have put up so many guards there that it has become almost impenetrable to reach out to the normal public and tell them about a certain investment or certain some sort of thing that will help them with their money or financial empowerment in general. So financial empowerment is not happening, financial literacy is not happening, let alone empowerment. That is, I see that as the biggest problem in this country as of today.
True. Unfortunately, all these regulatory authorities which you spoke about, they work in silos. Each
Mhm.
one is concerned about their own KPIs, if I were to say that, right? To the extent that way back in 2017, 2018, when RBI came heavily on the banks,
Yeah.
right? At that point of time, they said that it needs to be regulated. Why shouldn't SEBI do it? SEBI came back saying that we don't have the understanding or the knowledge of the space, and therefore we may not be the right authority to do it. But my question to them is, what stops them to increase that knowledge? What stops them to learning this space, right? This is a growing economy. You can do wonders out here, but still we are not able to do it. To the extent when uh, in the budget, when the first time taxation was introduced, right? 1% TDS on all your transactions, 30% on your profits, no set off, etc., etc. And our finance minister made a statement stating that whilst we are taxing this, we are not legitimizing crypto in the country. Now, do you need to say that? You are just here to collect money and that's about it. We are not coming to you to say that make it a legal tender, but at least give it some kind of sanctity such that the banks know how to deal with the exchanges, the banks know how to deal with the customers. But you are creating so much of ambiguity. The banks don't want to be on the wrong side of RBI,
Yeah.
right? Or wrong side of the law, and therefore creating so much of friction,
Just unnecessary chaos. You know,
right?
just like if I have to say it like that, it's just a very funny thing that comes to my mind whenever I look at our respected and honorable finance minister. So she's like a very interesting meme material nowadays, at least for Gen Z.
True. GST. That is for GST, right? But we take pleasure in, calling out that the CEO of the largest IT company is an Indian, the CEO of so and so company is an Indian. But sorry, he's not Indian. He's left the country because of pure draconian laws.
You, yeah.
You don't take pleasure in calling that person that he's an Indian. He's left your country. Please understand that for better good,
Exactly.
right?
So she's like this one sass, she kind of makes the life of everybody in the house hell.
You bet. You bet. Last year, or I think, was it last year or year before that, when the onion prices had gone up and she was questioned, and she said that I don't know about onion prices because we don't eat onions at home. Seriously, how can you be so insensitive to a population of the country to say that I don't eat onions and therefore I don't know about the prices?
Yeah, I mean, what do you literally mean? So people should just stop eating onion?
Exactly.
And it's very.
Exactly.
I very recently went to her constituency in Chennai,
Hmm.
and I went there for some other work, but I happened to meet some localites, and I just they are the ones who told me, oh, this is Nirmala Sitharaman's constituency. So I instantly became very conscious while speaking about Bitcoin and all. Ki, Acha, okay, are these people like too devoted? And maybe I don't know if these people are like a fan of Sitharaman and everything. And then I'm
Hmm.
just talking in general, acha, okay, this and that. I did not say anything derogatory or mean about her, anyways.
Yeah.
And they started saying that. That, I know I mentioned that, but I feel ashamed that, we kind of are kind of fueling something which is creating a problem for the entire country in general.
True.
And I think some journalist was questioning her about the capital gains taxes itself.
Hmm.
And capital gains taxes and the way it is for GSECs and the normal security, the government issued securities versus on normal bonds and stuff, because we consider bonds as a lesser risky investment in general. So the government bonds
Right.
have certain privileges in taxations versus the corporate bonds. So the return is almost more or less the same, maybe lesser in the government side, and then there is that. And this journalist happened to ask, "Yacha, why is that? Why would you not exempt people of these taxes as well? Because then
Hmm.
again, more or less the fundamentals of both of these items are the same. UPCL is a government company versus there's this some other private company in energy sector doing practically almost the same thing. But then again, there are tax benefits for this and not that. I mean, what is this?" She answers to it saying that, oh, now you trust somebody random more than your government. That was the answer. And I was astounded. I mean, how does that even make sense? People are
True.
investing in it. Where is the, I mean, if UPCL, for God forbid, for all the people who have invested in it,
Hmm.
God forbid if someday its operation stop or something goes wrong, governments are not still gonna come and pay or repay whatever investments people have made. So what is the point of using the name of the government over there?
Absolutely.
It's not safe either way. I mean, be that a private entity or a government entity.
True. Just check out the insurance on your fixed deposits at banks, right? You'll get your answer. If the bank goes bust, how much of recovery you can make from that?
Exactly.
Millions.
And it's a big question. People blindly keep fixed depositing their money, and they not even realize the interest rate that they're receiving over the years or in one year, say it's lesser than the rate of inflation for that particular year. Okay, so we are gonna quickly take a few questions here from the comment
Sure.
section. Rahul is saying SGB is scam. Shreyan is saying investment advice nahi, meme advice chahiye.
Shreyan, that will keep coming, don't worry. I was off guard today, but tomorrow onwards you'll start getting your memes.
So I think that's you. We can just have a little. Shreyan is very good at creating new groups every day. So he keeps
Hmm.
creating these multiple groups and for different purposes. I think Shreyan, you should create one meme exchange group altogether, and our source is going to be Burjis, and we're going to use it for orange filling further.
No, so
Then
my all my memes are there on Twitter or X now, right? And what I generally do is I post it on Twitter and create a meme out of it and share it across various groups.
yeah. No, it's fun. It's very interesting. We need something like that in Bitcoin, and obviously, it certainly stimulates good conversations around that.
True, true.
And then we have Rahul. Rahul is saying 80% tax on video and budget. अरे यार ऐसे मत बोलो. हालांकि मतलब hodling is one thing that I think.
100% ही ले लो ना. Why do you want 80% also? पूरा ले लो.
हाँ
Sit
वही.
next to me. Let's do the trades together. That's all I can say. Thankfully, I don't trade. I invest, so it doesn't affect me as of now.
Yeah, so that is why hodling is one part where you can just keep stacking it, and you can just. But then again, there's gonna be some point somebody might really need that money for something. Something might happen. Imagine having to pay 30% out of it to the government first before you kind of you can use that money for yourself, and it really devastates me. First that 1% TDS, and then this 30% taxes. People, what do they think people are making out of this? So I think they feel like people are putting some 1 rupee and making like 1 lakh out of it. That at least I think that is how they're thinking right now,
So
to ask 30% of the gains.
that is the unfortunate part because you will find so many influencers which will say that you invest in this crypto or this token or a shit coin and it's going to do 100x, and this country for sure will fall for it, right? People want chatpat schemes, they want to get rich overnight, and surely the money goes there rather than in the real
Hmm.
space where it is required to be.
And you know, um, somehow with the other cryptocurrencies, I find it very funny. I find it so funny whenever I meet somebody who believes in, say, some certain crypto, and I happen to ask this very normal question: Why do you believe in it? Like, oh, it's the next Bitcoin. We have missed the opportunity with Bitcoin. Now this thing is the next Bitcoin, and I'm like, how? What similarity do you see between Bitcoin and this other than just being built on a blockchain? And that too, it's a token. I mean, you can't even the way uska blockchain is solving some other problem in general, and it's not. There's so much. I mean, ERC20s and everything, and people are like, oh, this is the next Bitcoin, but how?
A question to them is basically, how robust or how secure that network is.
Yeah.
Please tell me what is the kind of hashing power that blockchain is using, compare it with Bitcoin, and then we'll talk.
Hmm.
Look at the dominance of Bitcoin in the entire crypto space, and then let's talk. If
Yeah.
they have answers to that, I'm sure they will not have a single answer to that. And that ends the conversation. I mean, forget the next Bitcoin or this or that. I mean, you don't even have to go past these two questions, at least.
Of
This is
course.
how I would take it up.
Of course, 100%. And I think I've spent a very long time explaining a lot of people, but then
Hmm.
I happen to give up thinking they will realize on their own once they lose their money, because Luna was one such example where people believed in it. I don't know, to a very great extent, thinking okay, this is the most interesting thing that is out there, and then it crashes, the algorithm fails, and this happens, and the entire market crashes after that, like a
Right.
domino. And a lot of people realized that Bitcoin is
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin after the Luna Terra crash. And such crashes are going to happen. Now, people in India have finally started realizing the value of self custody after the whole Wazir X thing. Before that, they hardly bothered. Now you
Right.
see more people asking questions about, oh, how do I self custody? And then we have, of course, entities out there who will keep telling normal, innocent public that, oh, self custody is not legal in India, and we keep telling, no, it is. There's no such rule that
Mm-hmm.
restricts you from self custodying your bitcoins. But
Right.
this entire lack of information, and people also not willing to find some things out on their own, all of those combined is a big challenge for the ecosystem in general. And they lose money, and after that they blame and they call Bitcoin a scam. So I
True.
find that hilarious, that you need to self custody. But yeah,
Right. And unfortunately, that is how media amplifies this, right?
yeah,
Any kind of a scam in the crypto space, and they blame it on Bitcoin,
they blame it on Bitcoin, yes.
which is
Saddest.
really stupid.
But yeah, I think media will also have a turnaround soon, and if they won't, certainly there will be, uh, you know, ecosystems that will be. I think independent media is going to take over the traditional media in the coming decade, industry wise, because how much do you prefer watching news for stock market updates, or in general finance updates or budget updates? You would rather open money control now to get all
Right.
that information. I prefer looking at news on Mint versus ZTV or versus Aaj Tak, because I get the gist of keyword. I'm not saying that Mint is a very, बहुत ही अच्छी मीडिया साइट है where everything is very
Mm-hmm.
bad. I don't know that, but at least I'm getting news without drama on that.
Right.
And then there's news laundry. News laundry is also a lot of drama, but yeah, still getting
Mm-hmm.
another perspective. And media has somehow transformed into something that is giving perspectives rather than information. So it's working on changing the way people look at things. So that is something problematic, because it has happened over the past 9 to 8 years, in my experience, jitna at least I have observed. Now there's not just information, there's tippity on every information that is kind of happened,
Mm-hmm.
and there are theories, conspiracy theories for every single news item there is, and there are debates happening around it, and
Right.
especially with Bitcoin and such stupid arguments. Oh my God, you can't watch that more than 2 minutes. You'll be like, oh God, who are these people?
Correct. So my go-to news channel is basically X. I
Mine as
spend
well, yeah.
I spend much more time watching or following certain handles, which gives me the right information at the right point of time rather than waiting for the news to relay it at a later date. And thankfully, after Elon has taken over, things are improved at X much better as
Yeah.
compared to what Jack Dorsey was running it
I agree with
as
that.
Twitter. So
I agree with that. And Twitter is actually more relevant because you know those people and you know those handles. So those news, whatever news is coming, especially for Bitcoin in general. So
right,
it's something that you can read and you can relate and you can be like, okay, this is the news and this has happened. You get the numbers and all very precise. And if there
correct,
are not, and then there's this whole comment section. So there's more information in the comment section because more
true,
people are giving
true,
more information around there. So I also find that very informative to just hop onto X for news in general. Nostr as well. I think Nostr is doing great with
right.
Bitcoin only stuff. So Bitcoin information in general. I mean, when I
Mm-hmm.
open Nostr, there's such interesting posts just about Bitcoin, and there's so many things that I wouldn't have even thought of. Ki, acha, this can be a thing. But those things they've explained in a very interesting manner, and you can just read
Correct.
and scroll through for hours and hours on Nostr without getting tired at all. So yeah, platforms like Nostr will be taking over soon. The entire the news flow mediums. We have
Certainly.
we have Rahul saying something very interesting here. I just noticed his comment. Onion is stable than INR. He's saying onion is supposedly more stable than INR. I think Reliance falls for Web3 scam. अच्छा ये I'm not aware Rahul. Reliance का कुछ I don't know if they were. I think Geo Metaverse or something they were thinking. No, जितना I remember hearing. I don't know. Or नहीं. Geo into Polygon is happening. I think. I briefly happened to see some
Mm,
post
mm.
today itself on Twitter. Geo into Polygon. Oh God, what is happening? So, Burgess, since we are at the
Yeah,
end of the session almost, just to get a quick, just your opinion on this one thing. How much are you bullish on India and Bitcoin in India and the need for it?
good question. Like we discussed, India needs to wake up. I'm sure it is not woken up enough, right? We as Bitcoiners, we are doing our bit in terms of educating people such that they don't fall for the wrong coins or fall for scams. But considering a population of 140 CR, right, it's inhumanly impossible to reach out to various nooks and corners of the country. India requires Bitcoin more like any other country, right? And
Mhm.
therefore, the earlier it adopts, the better it is compared to what other countries are doing, and they're not announcing it. Correct? At least here, where we see at the grassroots level, India is not doing anything about it. So I think it's a huge wake up call if the country needs to progress further. And we have talked about India becoming a $5 trillion economy in the next 2 years or so. And this innovation, if we are going to embrace it, it's going to give you a better path, right? In terms of doing things rather than watching investors moving out of the country, setting up shop elsewhere, such that they, ride this wave rather than be away from it just because of stupid regulations of the country.
Yeah. And I think kudos to you as well for doing so much in the space with the memes, especially, and
Mhm.
hosting whatever, gatherings and meetups we can in our own respective cities. And I think this is something that we can do at best with the best of whatever resources and capabilities we have. I think great going, and I'm so happy that you joined us for this session.
My
It was
pleasure.
so
Thank you.
interesting. It was a very enlightening talk as well in general. So thank you so
Mhm.
much for joining us today. Anybody
Absolutely.
who wants to get memes on Bitcoin and to send an orange pill their friends, please follow Burgess on Twitter. I think we can drop his handle somewhere in the comment section. Please go follow him. It'll be very interesting and it'll be fun. Okay. On this note, we'll be ending our today's session. We'll see you again next week, same day, same time, and with something that you all cherish information. Mostly, I think next week is going to be about Trump. So be ready, guys, for the Trump card. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You bye bye.